Old Arms of Idaho presents the Let It Go Show on KIDO Talk Radio. Here's your host, Dylan Stalker.
And welcome to KIDO Talk Radio. Our great friend Dylan Stalker joining us for the last Let It Go show. Good to have you with us, sir.
The last Let It Go show? What are you talking about, Kevin?
I don't know. What's going on with the show here today?
The last Let It Go show, you know...
You're letting it go.
I'm letting the Let It Go show go. I had a dream of radio. It's all about radio. So you know, ladies and gentlemen, it's all about radio. And I'm sitting in the radio dojo with Kevin Miller right now at 580 AM, 107.5 FM. And I had this dream of doing classified advertising for radio. You know, you see it in the East. It's in the East Coast, Kevin. Do the things in the East work in the West? Apparently not in some cases. But I love the show. It was a lot of fun. I love talking about what our sponsors love talking about. That's Old Arms of Idaho, oldarmsofidaho.com, 24-hour gun show, ambassadors to America's heritage, and talking about history, you know, firearms history and military history, Western history. It's such a fun subject, but ultimately you got to get somebody to engage with you, and it's a format that's designed for live. And, you know, you can only get what you can get from the suppliers that be here at KIDO Radio, but ultimately the people that own that will say. So it's been a great run, but we're going to let the Let It Go show go today, Kevin.
Well, we knew you well, the Let It Go show. I guess we're truly letting it go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great set of words. Obviously, we could use this all the next 4 segments, letting it go. What do you have to let go?
Oh, I have a lot of things to let go, but I don't. It's what keeps me spicy.
Oh, the spiciness, man. I'll tell you what, salt and pepper all over the place, and I'm not commenting on your age, I promise.
Well, thank you for that. So where would you like to go right now when we're thinking about, are you doing a new show? What's going on?
So thank you. Thank you for asking. Yes. I've told you all from day one, if you've been a listener since day one, I had this opportunity to get on the radio. I didn't know about it. You know, my personal belief is the only difference between those that do and those that don't are those that do just did. And I was like, hey, maybe I can do a radio show. And Kevin Miller welcomed me into the Kevin Miller dojo, the radio dojo, the brain gym. And he gave me a great gift. He gave me an opportunity to be on the radio, and unfortunately, the last format, the Let It Go show, where we talked about our sponsors, what they engage with, which is vintage firearms, Western, and militaria, Old Arms of Idaho, oldarmsofidaho.com. I'm like, I want to be on the radio, so what do I talk about? And what did I come up with? Idaho. Idaho is amazing. I was born and raised in Idaho. I'm a 3.5 generation Idahoan. What could I do on the radio? Because I love the radio, and it came down to the Great Idaho Show. It's coming up. You should all listen up. Stay tuned about the Great Idaho Show.
So when we take a look at this, how are people going to be able to get the Great Idaho Show? Is there a website?
Yeah, the Great Idaho Show is going to be thegreatidahoshow.com. And every single week, Dylan Stalker, me, myself, the 3.5 generation Idahoan, is going to go and focus all of the great things about Idaho that has utterly nothing to do with politics. I'll leave all the politics to everybody else, and I'll leave the things that happen in great politics to Kevin Miller and KIDO Radio right here. You should be listening every morning if you really want to know what's happening.
Well, sometimes you make a guest appearance.
But you know, I'm allowed to be on, so I'll participate. But this is about Great Idaho. This is about the great businesses. This is about adventure, what businesses support adventure, great initiatives, culture, art. I love Idaho. Idaho has been the greatest thing that ever happened to my life, minus my wife. There's no greater than my wife in that category. But second, Idaho is pretty amazing. We're going to do it in the Great Idaho Show at thegreatidahoshow.com, which is simply a feed that you can go and download it and listen at any time.
Well, let's discuss your thoughts on being here your whole life and so many people moving into Idaho.
Man, that's a really interesting one. So I grew up in Haley, Idaho. Haley, Idaho was a town of like 3,500 people. It was small town Idaho. You know, everybody knew everybody. I remember when I was a kid, I jumped on my tricycle one time and rode probably 4 blocks away to go down to the local drugstore and see if I could get some candy. And my parents had an account and they actually put it on the account. And I mean, I can't believe that I was literally that young. I was older riding the only machine that I had, right? Mm-hmm. But it was an old school community that took care of it. And to watch the Wood River Valley turn into what it is today, it's like Fifth Avenue, New York now. You know, it's mega money all over the place. The impacts of people moving in are, if you're in Idaho, as of yesterday, you're impacted by people moving in. So how do we do what's good with it?
Well, let's talk a little bit about the idea of growth. Your thoughts on the growth?
You know, you're either growing or you're not. And growth at least brings finances to the state that can do either a good or a bad thing. And the Great Idaho Show, the GreatIdahoShow.com, is not about politics. So that's a tough question because growth is politics, right? My number one thing is Idaho is culturally some of the most cautious, nice people. If you've lived here for a long time or you just got here, most people are surprised about the genuine, courteous nature of anybody from Idaho. And that is what I hope doesn't change. You know, a lot of cultures that are moving here, they were born and raised on get it any way you can. You got to get yours. I got to get mine. And it turns it into that where the walls of your business are built on protecting yourself from your clients and clients being protected from. And it's really just, it's a sad thing. The cultural shift in Idaho is switching quick, and I hope people can grasp it.
So are you going to try to save the culture?
I think I want to be a participant of the only thing of which I control. The Great Idaho Show, thegreatidahoshow.com, you can go listen up. Every single weekend, there's going to be an interview with somebody or something that's doing something great in Idaho. And my core motivation is to share what I've experienced. You know, like one of the future episodes is the Sawtooth Lodge. The Sawtooth Lodge in Grand Jean, Idaho. Everybody's all focused on this Stanley side of the Sawtooths.
Right.
Stanley's big money and the big Salmon River. And I mean, it's like Jellystone. You know, where's Yogi Bear running around, right? It's really just been so popularized on the backside of the Sawtooths with a closer shot to the Sawtooths than Stanley is one of the greatest pieces of Idaho history. You got the Grand Jean Lodge, Emil Grand Jean, who settled that whole area, and one of the most prehistoric looking areas. I mean, it looks like there's dragons and wizards that should be hanging around. And we're going to talk to Jesse from the Sawtooth Lodge. And just, it's something that I experience every day. And if you haven't, mark my words, you will never forget experiencing that location. It's just immensely beautiful. One of the most beautiful spots in Idaho.
Well, that's the issue, though. There's more to the state, and obviously, how much work has gone into this?
So the Sawtooth Lodge is an interesting little piece of ground in that they lease the ground from the Forest Service. No, none of that ground is owned out there. There's cabins that are out there. It's all on 50-year leases, right? But it is a tremendous historical heritage location, of which there's been a lot of history that transpired in that valley, the South Fork of the Payette River, or Highway 21, the Ponderosa Scenic Byway. Listen to the name of that stretch of highway, the Ponderosa Scenic Byway. The rivers look like something that you would see in Belize in their aqua blue color, and just complete original, raw, fresh nature. And the Grand Jean Lodge is 6 miles off the highway, of which you can go and participate in an area that hasn't really changed much in over 100 years. The lodges, you think of like Stanley, and it's all Sun Valley style, 36-inch round giant log mega buildings and things like that, right? This is a location that has still the original pioneering lodges. It still has some of the most vibrant hot springs around. I mean, you're driving right by the Sacagawea hot springs, and boiling out of the ground is the stuff and images that you would see on Instagram. It just is mind-bogglingly beautiful, and you have a very interesting group of people who suffer the bureaucracy of the Forest Service to participate in managing a piece of history and sharing it all with the public. You can go hang out there. They've got their hot pool. You can go and hang out in their lodges. My wife and I participate in it on a weekly basis, and I'm so excited. This is what the Great Idaho Show, the greatidahoshow.com is all about. I am sharing it because I experience it, and you mark my words, you will never forget it. And
are you going to like travel to these places, or how's that going to work?
I think in the beginning of the show, I've already traveled too. I've been all over Idaho. I know Idaho. I've either been there or I've experienced it in some way. The Great Idaho Show is connecting you to Idaho through a 3.5 generation Idahoan that's been there. Right through whatever I can through these great airwaves.
Well, we do appreciate that. Again, we've let it go. The Let It Go show is no more, but replaced by
The Great Idaho Show, thegreatidahoshow.com, right here through KIDO Radio, 580 AM, 107.5 FM.
And we will have more with our friend Dylan Stocker. By the way, let's talk a little bit about our sponsor.
Sponsored by Old Arms of Idaho, the greatest collectible firearms Western military business in the West. oldarmsofidaho.com, 24-hour gun show, ambassadors to America's heritage.
More coming up next on KIDO Talk Radio. And welcome back to KIDO Talk Radio. Our friend Dylan Stocker joining us, brought to you by Old Arms of Idaho. Dylan, we've got a new name of the program.
New name, thegreatidahoshow.com, or The Great Idaho Show.
Is there a place in Idaho that is the very best?
Man, that's a really tough comparison. The only way to know Idaho is to drive it. The Old Arms of Idaho, our sponsors, that's my business, so I get to be super favorable on communicating our sponsorship. It has led us, my wife and I, to drive all over Idaho into the weirdest little backcountry areas that you can possibly go. I've lived here. Either business has taken me there or friends or family have taken me there. And, you know, you got to drive it. But when you ask about the best, what's the best of Idaho?
Yeah.
There's nothing in Idaho better than the Sawtooths, if you ask me. But, you know, if you were to ask somebody from eastern Idaho, somebody from Rigby, Teetonia, you know, basically the eastern side of the state, they're going to be all raving about the Tetons. You know, Tetons and the Sawtooths and giant mountains of just pristine beauty with fresh water boiling out of the ground that you can drink right out of the ground. It's like Jeremiah Johnson, you know, catching fish with your hands and stuff. And that's what the Great Idaho Show is all about.
And that's the fun, catching fish with your hands?
I mean, it depends on who you are, you know. I mean, we could be eating Tostitos hamburger and cheese in our little drywall covered houses, or you can get out there and feel what it's like to get out. But Idaho is definitely one of its greatest things. Is its pure natural beauty, its natural water resources, recreation, fishing, lakes. I've been there. It's hard to pick a number one, Kevin.
Well, let me delve a little deeper here then. Let's talk about some of the famous places of Idaho. You know, everybody talks about Sun Valley.
Oh, my goodness.
What's your take on Sun Valley?
All right. So, you know, born and raised there as a white bread, macaroni and cheese eating kid. You know, I wasn't a part of the Sun Valley with all the money and what's going on.
Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Kraft macaroni and cheese, you know, or here, I'll throw one at you. How about peanut butter and mayonnaise? What do you think about that one?
Oof, hardcore, bro.
Kevin squinted there.
Hardcore.
If you could only see what happens in there. But, you know, yes, I was born and raised there. You have the Wood River High School. And, you know, when your school funding comes from your county and your property taxes, honestly, what a great opportunity. to go to school. So much more money. Their science department was fantastic. There was teachers that were just really engaged. One of the most impactful people I ever had in my life as a young man, Mr. King, as a football coach that saved me from myself. You know, so on the cultural basis, it's fantastic. But now I'll tell you, it is not for the people that have been born and raised there. It is so mega money that, you know, if you're still able to survive, it's because you were allowed to. You were allowed to have the job that financially supported you enough to keep there. It's like a giant popularity contest. Because if not, you can't afford it. You have to live in Shoshone and drive in and suffer the wind drifts and drive up and down that highway and risk your life every day.
But what makes Sun Valley so special? Is it just reputation? Is it Allen and Company? Is it Hemingway?
I mean, it's Allen Company. It's big money, right? And it's beauty, right? The reason why it's there is pure beauty. I mean, you have the mountain, the Bald Mountain, right? Ski resort. When I was a kid, for $347, you got a season's pass, and parents would just go drop their fourth graders off in the morning and come pick them up at the end of the day with no supervision. It was just packs of rat kids running around the ski hill all over the place. Now you got the Allen and Company thing, you know, and it's big money influence. It's got its own airport, and it's who's got it's. You know, what do your neighbors got? I wish I had more.
Right.
You know, I was lucky. I sold cars in Sun Valley I sold cars in Haley. And one of my clients was Bruce and Demi Moore.
Well, wait a minute. What's the difference between Haley, Ketchum, and Sun Valley?
So you've got a long valley. As you pull into it, you have Bellevue, Idaho, old Belver. I know you're out there, Bellevue. Those are the real people of that valley right now, the Bellevue folks. And then you come 3 miles forward and you get to Haley, and Haley's Central Valley.
I've been to Haley.
12 miles north, you have Ketchum and Sun Valley. And that is where, you know, it's like Dumb and Dumber. We're going to go to Aspen. You know, but it's a beautiful thing, right? There's going to be these things that exist because it is just immensely beautiful. The bounty of Idaho and people going out and experiencing it. You've got the Big Wood River with some of the greatest fishing guides that ever lived. If you love fishing, you know, it is a different class of money for sure. You know, but if we were all just equal, we'd all be just living in our little square box and getting our food pellets, and that opportunity would never exist. And I got to experience it, you know. I did. I sold car to Bruce and Demi Moore.
Well, how did that happen?
Because I was in the car sales business, and they just kind of walked in, and the deal came to me. You know,
well, you make it sound so ordinary. What were they like? You
know, it was kind of like I was a bystander. It's not like I was some influential person. Actually, like
wait a minute, you said you
I
were
delivered
a
car to their house. Oh, so let's say I processed the paperwork while the bosses did the stuff, and my name was on it. But you know, I mean, Bruce used to come in to. Do you know the coffee shop Java here in Boise, down on 13th? Java was started in Haley, Idaho, and Bruce used to go in there every day and order his double bowl of soul, you know, and just regular folks. Honestly, there was some celebrity personalities that I engaged with that were exactly what you would think. Like if they played kind of a jerk on TV, guess what? They were just extending their personality. Like, have you ever met John Larroquette?
No.
John Larroquette, man, what? Anyways, just his personality in Night Court, if you remember Night Court.
Okay.
With Bull and all of the characters. But John Larroquette, man, that guy, that's he's John Larroquette. We'll just leave it right there.
Okay.
But
so Bruce Willis, though, did he have a nice house?
Yeah, they've got a house. Let's talk about the estate that's north of Haley. You were in Haley doing the
Bo Bergdahl.
the Bo Bergdahl mission, right? And just north of...
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Isn't that for so many things? So was some things recent to me. But, just north of Haley, against the mountain that would be called Carbonate, at the base of that, on the other side of the river, they have an amazing compound. Bruce and Demi owned many parts of Haley itself, the town. They bought the commercial.
They buy the movie theater and all that?
Yeah, everything. And then they did the Mint Bar, and the Mint Bar was amazing. I went into the Mint Bar as a young partying man, and Bruce loves blues. And he had a band called the Bruce Willis and the Accelerators. And just out of the blue, the Accelerators show up upstairs with less than probably 200 people. And Bruce is there like you could touch him. And he's just wailing on the mic. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like him, love him, don't like him, whatever. That guy was an entertainer, and it was I was standing right there, just a bystander, like just some poor car salesman in Haley, Idaho, you know, getting exposed to some things that people would have probably paid $100 just to go see in 15,000 other people.
Did you find Debbie more attractive?
No, absolutely not.
Really?
I'm a married man.
No, but I mean, when you see a movie star, at that time she was probably still young.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So absolutely, I mean, anybody that can't agree that Demi Moore is attractive is just, I don't know, doesn't have their eyes open, I guess. But I didn't engage with her.
Well, I never said that you would. I just asked if you saw that she was attractive, and you know, were you starstruck?
You know, when you live up there, truthfully,
yeah, you
do engage with quite a few personalities. I've engaged with Arnold Schwarzenegger, John Larroquette, Bruce and Demi Moore,
Mariel
Hemingway.
Yeah.
You know, like we're all just humans, right?
What about Arnold? He's not a human.
Arnie, okay. He has a house north of Ketchum in a canyon called Lake Creek. I'm a sluggo, okay? I'm doing plumbing in a house called the Desco
Now,
home.
wait a minute. I thought you were a car salesman.
Well, I've done a couple of things, okay?
The story continues.
The story continues. So I'm working on, at this point, a $13 million home when they are putting in 3-inch gas lines. Kevin Miller.
Do you know anything about plumbing, or did you just make it up as you...
I was in a struggling time in my life, and my best friend's dad said, I'm going to help you. You're a plumber. Paid me like a journeyman, and I was a slave dog.
All right. Hold on. More next, KIDO Talk Radio. Welcome back to the Great Idaho Show on KIDO Talk Radio. When last we left, Dylan was a car salesman. Now he's a plumber.
I was a plumber. Went through a tough time there, you know.
Sure.
That 2008 was a ravaging thing to a lot of people. And when you're a technical recruiter hiring software engineers to people in the technology area, the first thing to go down is recruiting. When you want to start a recruiting agency 3 months before that happens, yeah, you know.
Timing's everything.
Timing's everything. I might even have the timing off on that one, but ultimately.
So wait a minute now. Back to the Arnold.
Arnie. Okay, check this out.
Yeah.
Lake Creek, north of Ketchum, somewhere under 5 miles. You're heading north towards Stanley. There's a thing called Lake Creek. Make a right turn. In less than 5 miles, you are probably going to be encompassed in $150 million worth of like 20 homes.
What is a gated community or
It's
something?
not even gated. You can drive right down this road, but and at the very end of it is Arnie's place. And I mean, this is straight out of television, like when you imagine this estate. I'm working up there on this $13 million home, putting in 3-inch gas. For all of you people listening that have worked in a trade and you know plumbing, and you're putting in steel iron pipe that is 10-foot sticks of 3-inch steel pipe in the ceiling that's 13 feet tall. These people used enough gas to have a 3-inch need. That is more than the entire property of Sun Valley. 3 inches is insane. Anyways, big money stuff, right? I'm out there and I'm like, I'm going to go check out Arnie's place. This is when he was the governor. And I went and I made a right turn on that street, and you drive to the end, and at the very end of that road.
Were you in the plumbing van?
What was I driving? I could have been.
Because they would
like
stop
straight up.
Yeah.
Yeah, or I was full of like radios and I was actually spying on them, right? And so I drive to the end of the road. And there's public ground right around it, right? His estate is great, but it's all surrounded by Forest Service. So I stayed on the Forest Service road. How fast do you want to think the black cars were up upon me? They were like, hey, man, what are you doing? I'm just like driving. You know, I didn't see Arnie that day, you know what I mean? But I'm like standing right at his back door. He was there that weekend because earlier that week I was in a coffee shop in Kevin, and, you know, Arnie's in there getting coffee. like a normal person.
Are people bothering him?
No, honestly, the general culture of Sun Valley gets it. There's a reason why they have all moved there and have been for a very long time. It all started with like Maria. Well, it started with like Clint Eastwood.
Well,
right. You've got Tom Hanks.
It started with Hemingway.
Well, it started with Hemingway.
They paid Hemingway to be out there.
Thank you. Right, Hemingway in the Hiawatha Hotel in Haley, Idaho, which is a hotel that burnt down that I was trying to get tetanus in when I was a kid trying to break into it. Hemingway was playing poker in the Hiawatha Hotel when he was hanging out there. There's like such an immense history in Idaho.
Well, before you get back to Hemingway, so you met Arnold. You tried to break into his house,
so slightly.
and then they arrested you.
You'd be close to. I don't know. I was young and I don't know. You want to poke the bear a little bit, I guess, every once in a while. Well, I mean, like, you're the governor of California in my backyard. I was born and raised here. What's going on up here there?
Well,
Superman.
So let's go to Hemingway.
Hemingway.
Yeah, but I mean, your thoughts on Ernest Hemingway, beloved figure, and not many people know that he ended up in Idaho, and that was the end for him here.
Yeah, so I'm not going to claim to be some great Hemingway historian, of course. Yes, he had a huge impact in that valley, and we're talking about the Union Pacific Railroad. That is why Sun Valley exists. Okay, the right. Union Pacific pioneers a railway up into Sun Valley, and then somebody is just like, hey, let's do a little resort in here, and then Hollywood fell in love with it. I mean, how many stars do you need to see Marilyn Monroe? And I mean, if you were in Hollywood, you went to Sun Valley, and then Mr. Proctor, I believe, and somebody will check me on that, put the first ski lift in the world right there.
Yeah.
You know, so. Talking about Hemingway, I mean, he was a literal man, right? He was a published literal man that had a huge impact, and it was kind of like the heyday of Americana in his generation, you know. And he was a man of that valley, you know. And from what I understand, again, I'm not some Hemingway person. I didn't go to college, but
Hemingway's presence is still there today with the Hemingway house.
Oh yeah,
people come by.
Mariel, I think Mariel still lives there. I ended up, of course, you connect through business. You know, Mariel bought a car through me, I should say. I was just a little whippersnapper.
Did they buy a car? Did you deliver it? Because you said
both.
Bruce Willis bought a car from you.
So
but you
ultimately, you never do business with the star, right? You always do business with their executive administrator.
I would know because you're the one that's doing business with the star.
Well, I was lucky enough to participate, and I'm just a,
So for people though that would like to check out Hemingway, you would recommend going up there.
I mean, if you're going to experience what he reflects on for the parts of his life that were there, the entire Wood River Valley still exists scenically, no different than it was before. You just add a bunch of beautiful buildings and a bunch of money into it. But, the big Wood River and, running up into the SNRA, traveling over Galena Summit down into Stanley. I mean, you can live in Indiana and look at thousands of miles of cornfields and flat earth. If you haven't experienced it, you got to drive through it. I don't care who you are, what your opinion is, or where you come from, and how you think it's managed. It is the bounty of Idaho. This is the Great Idaho Show, thegreatidahoshow.com. That's what this is all about.
Well, and that's what we're talking about, keeping Idaho great. So when you take a look at the many fiefdoms of Idaho, we've covered Sun Valley, but I'm surprised you don't have a lot more people from Boise going up there. Sun Valley seems to be its own unique universe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you do get a lot of people from the Treasure Valley going to Sun Valley, right?
Yeah.
But it is, it's a club. It's a giant public club, for sure. It's a full-on 100% pay-to-play operation.
So if you don't ski, what do you do in Sun Valley?
Oh, my goodness. Golf, kayak, cross-country ski,
they have
fishing.
A bookstore?
Iconoclast, if they're still there. Maybe you're one of the great bookstores of Idaho, Iconoclast, the Great Idaho Show. Maybe we should talk.
Well, no, I always wonder. It just seems that everything is outdoors.
It is certainly, but they also have, that whole thing that Bruce was doing, Bruce and Demi. I don't know their association, but when they bought the theater, they turned it into like an acting club, if you will. And it ended up producing some things that put a lot of people into stardom. You know, one of my friends, just born and raised local Idaho kid, goes and tries out and plays. And then the next thing you know, he's distributed all over Hollywood, for just connecting up to some local little thing there. But it's pay to play in Sun Valley for sure.
Well, how does Sun Valley change during Allen and Company?
Man, that's a really tough thing. Has it changed? I mean,
how does it change? I mean, obviously,
it's a once-a-year deal.
The airport is crazy.
It's a once-a-year deal. Like, one of my best friend's mom worked for Horizon Air for, I think it's 40 years or something like that. And once it all starts going down, I mean, it's an economy. If you're just the white bread kid like me, you're getting a job doing something, supporting Allen and Company at that time. I ran the Wood River Journal's sales department. The Wood River Journal is one of Idaho's oldest newspapers. There's just a tremendous history for the Wood River Journal. And man, you want to talk about media getting on the money line for when Allen and Company comes to town. It is just like.
Well, I was going to say, how do they support that? I understand you have the world's richest people, but then you have Bloomberg, you have Fox, you have CNBC that cover it because it's really their Super Bowl. So, I mean, putting logistically the satellite trucks and all that up.
Yeah.
That's and putting these journalists in the hotels.
Yeah. I mean, it maxes out, right? Sun Valley, Ketchum, it's hospitality. 5-star across the board. What does 5-star mean? Just more expensive than anything else. And what do you get for that? Yeah, you get a great experience. If you want to, but it's like you want to go to Disneyland, you want to go drop $5,000 and stand in line and ride the rides and eat your $40 cheeseburger, or you can go to one of the greatest ski hills in the West.
That's if you ski.
That's if you ski, or you can mountain bike or ride the chairlift up in the summertime just to see the views and ride it back down.
And more coming up next on KIDO Talk Radio. Welcome back to the Great Idaho Show. Dylan Stocker joining us from Old Arms of Idaho. Dylan, tell us a little bit about Old Arms of Idaho.
Old Arms of Idaho. Old Arms of Idaho, the sponsors of what used to be the Let It Go Show, which we're letting go today. And what you're hearing now is the Great Idaho Show, thegreatidahoshow.com. Old Arms of Idaho being the sponsor is the greatest collectible firearms, Western, and military store in the West. It's not just about the firearms. We're in the history business. If you have something that is associated or would be deemed collectible, think about it like the Antique Roadshow for collectible firearms, Western and military. They are your experts. You can call 208-602-6027 or just look them up, oldarmsofidaho.com, ambassadors to America's heritage 24-hour gun show.
And let's get back to the Great Idaho Show. Where can people find you?
TheGreatIdahoShow.com is a simple podcast feed where you can listen to the most recent episodes. Let's clarify some things about the Great Idaho Show. This is my personal interest project. I love Idaho more than I would. I mean, is there a scale? If it's a scale of 1 to 10, it's 11, and it is just my goal to go and touch base and interview people in a Kevin Miller format, a Kevin Miller interview format of what are you doing that's great? Let's focus on the fun. And it is not paid for. It is genuine. These people that you are going to be listening to about what's great in Idaho, they're not paying for this time slot. It's because I find them very interesting. I find them to be contributing to the culture of Idaho, and all of that's great. And I just would love to share and interview them so all you can participate and decide to go and experience it your own self.
And we are touring the state. Let's go to one of my favorite places that I've never been, Eastern Idaho.
Eastern Idaho, okay. So I was a Cougar. That's a Rexburg High School.
Okay.
Go Cougs. And Eastern Idaho is an interesting place. Kevin, in Eastern Idaho, they let high school out for 2 weeks in the fall to work in farming. I drove a spud truck as a 16-year-old and 17-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. You get out for 2 weeks. you make like $2,000 a week driving a semi truck without the trailer, basically hauling spuds in the spud fields. I mean, it's like a song, like a country song. What a great time. I mean, that's a cultural experience that I just feel so lucky to have participated with. The whole concept of Eastern Idaho, you've got a religious collective there that, if you don't know, you can go look it up yourself. That is just, I mean, quite honestly, culturally, I think is what makes Idaho great too. You've never met a more genuine, nice person that has a motivation for caring and community than in that religious community. And I got to participate in that. I had some pretty tough stuff going on at a young age, and I was brought under the wing of somebody because they cared. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know if I'd be here today. But when it talks about the things you can experience in Eastern Idaho, it's much like here in the Treasure Valley. You've got this valley, you've got a great river running through it. You've got the Snake River, some of the greatest parts of the Snake River. I mean, if you love fishing, the Snake River out in Swan Valley, I grew up with my grandfather taking me up and down the Snake River in a jet boat. And my entire family in a jet boat, just blowing through waves in the Snake River. It's an experience. There's lots of adventures and guides you can go out there, or just park on the side of the river and check it out. It's a lot of fun over there.
Yeah, but what about the INL and all those other things?
Oh my gosh. Let me give you a piece of advice. Okay, everybody. If you're driving through the craters of the moon, that is a great thing about Idaho. The craters of the moon, they actually trained our NASA astronauts to imagine what it was like to be on the moon. That's what part of that is, because it's such a unique volcanic location. But right short after that, you're driving through the INL or the INEL or the INEEL. A couple things you can experience with this one. Go ahead and park your car on the side of the road and start walking in. Within about 100, once you get about 100 yards off the road, you're going to have a drone or something flying over on you real fast, and you're going to have police force on you.
Sounds like the voice of experience.
There's real stuff going on out there. Right. The other thing is they don't like to pull anybody over. Don't take my advice. You shouldn't speed. Speeding is bad. But if you like to test the cops and see if they're really out there, go ahead and speed through INL, because you probably won't get pulled over.
It's a massive facility, though, right?
It is a massive, massive, massive facility. And it creates quite the economy for people that live in the Rexburg, Idaho Falls, Rigby, St. Anthony area, that are scientists, literal scientists that are traveling out to the INL and all the secret underground stuff that they have going on out there. If I were living in the West and I was terrified of America getting invaded and I lived anywhere close to that, I would be very nervous, because that is a strategic location. My opinion, I don't know anything special. I just grew up out there.
Right. But, obviously, what's the town of Pocatello or Idaho Falls like? I mean, obviously you have the university there as well.
Yeah, so Pocatello it's a small town. It's growing very, very quickly. And you do have the university there. And, I've experienced Pocatello a good bit. My mom lived in Lava City, and that is where Theodore Roosevelt came through and saw the area and was like, this is an American gem. The hot springs that are out there are just world renowned. And my mom lived there, kind of like hippie town. And it's not too far from Pocatello. But Pocatello is still, in Pocatello, if you don't take the keys out of your car and leave your car unlocked, you're probably going to be okay. Super simple, nice, easy going. You've got some huge medical stuff growing out there. Lots of, I forget what plant's right outside of Pocatello, but it's a lot like the sugar plant in the Treasure Valley. I mean, it's just a processing. I think it is beets too. Lots of agriculture all over the place.
Lots of ag
everywhere.
And you have a lot of cultural conservatives.
Cultural conservatives, but man, things are changing very quickly. It's kind of like that Instagram, social generational thing. That's just a lot about the frills versus the good old down home, you're my neighbor, I got your back, and I'm your neighbor, and I hope you have my back too, you know? And that's what the Great Idaho Show, the greatidahoshow.com is all about, is the original cultural difference of Idaho. Why did you all move here? If you're just listening to this on KIDO Radio 580 AM, 107.5 FM, you know, I grew up in Great Idaho. And it's just about, I like to think of words like courteous.
Well, is it the end
Courteous.
of Idaho?
No, that's a trap question, because the Great Idaho Show will not ever talk politics.
Oh,
But talk
farms
politics.
are replaced by subdivisions.
Yeah, farms are replaced by subdivisions, you know, for sure. You know, the farms that are out there in eastern Idaho, lots of potatoes, man. Like I said, I drove truck in the Spuds. The families there are legacy families. They've been a part of Idaho for, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6 generations, and they are what made Idaho great, and they are all under attack for their personal conservative opinions. You know, it's like, hey, wait a minute. You just moved here because these people helped create what it is today. Like, let's put the sword down and not attack so hard. You know what I mean?
Well,
let's just remember why we're here.
That's what they're doing, the outsiders.
The outsiders, you know, is it the Great Idaho Show or the Great California Show?
Well,
what is this going to be here?
Well, we're going to find that out.
Let's
Dylan,
make the choice.
Bring it home. You've got a minute left to talk about Old Arms of Idaho and the Great Idaho Show and life itself.
So I would like
your fixation with Demi Moore.
Oh, yes. Thank you for highlighting that. Wow. The Great Idaho Show, the greatidahoshow.com. It's a simple podcast feed. You can listen 24 hours a day through a safe link. But ultimately is sponsored by Old Arms of Idaho, oldarmsofidaho.com. 24-hour gun show and ambassadors to America's heritage. If you have something that is collectible in your mind of firearms or Western or militaria, I will help you. It's not that I'm just trying to lure your business. I just want to help you with it. And that is all through the great and powerful voice of KIDO Radio, KIDO Talk Radio, 580 AM, 107.5 FM.